All right. And I just want to jump into a couple of things really quick that will hopefully drive some of this home. So the first thing is I think that everybody probably understands that, Chat GPT, and let me just move this thing out of the way here really quick here. Yeah. So Chat GPT, announced something quite interesting, which was, these my GPTs. And so just the same way that you can go into Chat GPT and talk about it, you can actually create a custom GPT. And I'm just going to jump on this for 1 second to show you in case you haven't seen this, because it's a pretty big deal. It basically allows you to come in here and say, you know what, like, I think I want to build a specialist on e-commerce conversion marketing, right? And as soon as I, hit this, what's going to happen is this thing's going to get started looking for and building this sets of expertise. Right now, what you have to realize is that at this point, if you're a business, you may be able to get way more specific than this thing will, but we're going to get to it. So at least what it's doing is it's building a narrowed set of expertise specifically for a purpose. And we may or may not let this thing get all the way, because it's going to ask me a couple of questions like, do I want to name this thing and everything else, which I'm not going to do. But at the end of the day, it's basically created the behavior. Now it's saying, hey, we're creating a specialist that is, in e-commerce. Do you want to, give it a name? And they get kind of cute. And what, long story short, is when you come over here to configure this thing, you can give it a name. But what's amazing is it already gave a description, so we can see this thing later. Here's what its behavior is now, right? So that's kind of narrowing in its expertise. It should stay updated with the latest trends in e-commerce. And then you can kind of like get it prepared to kickstart the conversation. So maybe there's some things that you just want to prepare a couple of questions. The reason why is because you can build this and then have somebody else, let's say overseas talent, right? From an overseas international economic standpoint, use something that you've built with a little bit of judgment guardrails. And then of course, as you go down here, you can upload things. Now think about uploading your like entire FAQ, entire process, entire personas of who you search, or maybe it's your brand guidelines of who you are. There's a lot of things that you might want this thing to have knowledge in the background, because it'll guide how they act. And the other thing that's interesting, I think if you're a 4.0 user, is that, this will have the ability to browse webs, create images, or maybe even interpret code. And then there's these actions, right? And when you get into actions, this is now where you can start to give it access to data. And in some cases, add and subtract data. This may be a little bit beyond. If you guys go mess around with this, you'll see some examples, but it loads code in here. And this is some of the stuff that you guys can check out. The reason that's important, by the way, is because getting back to, this presentation, that is basically somebody saying to the world, hey, we've got this thing that is, worth 100 million brains, that has searched everything there is known to mankind up to April of this past year. Like, if it already knows e-commerce, it's read everything there is to know about e-commerce, right? There you go. And right here, it's allowing you to create multiples of these. And now there's a lot of speculation why they're doing it, but one of the reasons they're doing it is because they're going to create a marketplace. So just like you guys might have, built a mobile app and put it in there to hopefully get people to download it and maybe buy stuff, they're now turning this loose in a little open source move to where if you're really good at training your custom GPT on e-commerce conversion marketing, and you've got access to some of the main platforms already built, well, you might be able to sell that to somebody else. I might buy that from you so that I can use it in my workflow. So you can kind of see how these things are happening. Now we're going to get to these a little bit later on, but I want to go back to some like actual use cases here, because again, this is a range, but it is pretty cool.